the sound of the last laugh, my friend. Don't you love the sound of the last laugh at the end? Down in the gutter where the mad old soldier, down in the scuppers with the drunken sailors, down in the gutter with the mad old soldier. But the last laugh, baby, is yours. And don't you love the sound of the last laugh?
Welcome to Georgia Court News. We're going to do a little video podcast, a summary of the case Christopher Pierre Hicks. Christopher Pierre Hicks was convicted of felony murder out of Catoosa County. He was also convicted of possession of methamphetamine with intent to distribute and manufacturing methamphetamine. We're going to go over this case. First of all, you know what? Anytime you're charged with a criminal offense, due process is the most important factor involved with that criminal process. You have to get an attorney. You have to get discovery. Discovery being the evidence that the case that the state has against you. You've got a right to know everything that the state has against you. And then, should you be convicted, your next step would be you have a right to appeal that conviction. That's what we're going to be discussing here involving this Mr. Hicks case. Mr. Hicks case, he's been in prison now for 18 years. Nobody's filed Mr. Hicks' appeal yet. Imagine you claim that you are innocent. You are in fact innocent. And the attorneys that you've had for 18 years have not filed your appeal. They've given you this excuse. They've given you that excuse. Most of the time, they don't even return your call because you're locked away somewhere down in a South Georgia prison. And they ain't got to answer you. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're locked away down in a South Georgia prison. So once in a blue moon, they give some kind of excuse like, well, their patent excuse is this: we don't have the record yet. Now, these attorneys, Jennifer E. Hildebrand out of Lafayette, Georgia, that has been his attorney for the past 17 years on appeal. That's her patent excuse. We don't have the record yet. Well, that's wonderful. Georgia law dictates that if there's no record of a criminal conviction, you must give the man a new trial. We cannot have people sitting around in prison with no record of the conviction. Common sense tells you that. You don't need to be a lawyer. We don't need to go over any statutes. Common sense tells you you can't have people sitting around in prison with a life sentence, serving a life sentence, but there's no record of that conviction. Or critical parts of that conviction record are missing, as is the case here with Mr. Hicks. So Jennifer E. Hildebrand, she just lets 1 year go by, 2 years go by, 3 years go by, 4 years go by. Here we are at 18 years. No appeal. How can this happen in our society, folks? We can't let this happen. It don't even matter if Mr. Hicks is guilty or innocent. He has a right to his appeal. And we can't let that man languish in prison without exercising his right to appeal. So here's what's been going on. Mr. Hicks came to me and he told me what was going on, and I'm just going to tell you. I didn't even think about it. I just had a knee-jerk reaction. I said, well, you got to fire that damn woman. Yeah, get rid of her. Let's get rid of Jennifer E. Hildebrand, and he said, let's get you another lawyer, somebody that'll file this appeal. So Mr. Hicks sent this notice to Miss Jennifer E. Hildebrand. Dear Miss Hildebrand, this correspondence is to serve as notice that I am discharging and terminating your services as appellate counsel pursuant to Rule 1.16 of the Georgia Rules of Professional Conduct, which says, a client has a right to discharge a lawyer at any time with or without cause. See you later, Miss Hildebrand. Go on else. So go somewhere else. I have also filed a motion to terminate the services of appellate counsel with the Superior Court of Catoosa County. I request that you file a formal notice of withdrawal as counsel of record, including an order of the court, and send me a copy of same. Sincerely, Christopher P. Hicks, Sr. All right, Mr. Hicks sent that to Miss Hildebrand, letting her know she was fired. Then he filed the motion to terminate services. Got a copy of it right here. In fact, I drew it up. Then he filed a motion to represent himself pro se. And he filed an application for the writ of habeas corpus ad testificandum, which is a writ necessary to get him taken to court for a hearing on this matter. All right. Well, after we filed them motions, what do you think Miss Hildebrand did next? Well, here's what she did. She ran out and filed an appeal at the Supreme Court of Georgia. She filed an appeal at the Supreme Court of Georgia, and when she explained it to Mr. Hicks, she said, well, I found the record. After 17 years, 18 years, I found a record all of a sudden. There it was. So I filed the appeal. And then, the very next day, she filed a motion to withdraw as appellate counsel. Now, what in the world is she doing? I'm going to tell you what she's doing. That is a malicious act. That's something like a little high school twit would do. Some little high school twit. That's something that some little girl would do. And this is to be this woman holds herself out to be a professional litigator with people's very lives in the palm of her hand. And she's playing these little high school games with this man's life. Okay, after she filed the appeal and we got word of it, the first thing we did was this. Had Mr. Hicks file a notice to the court of an unauthorized filing and motion to withdraw the appeal and return to notice of appeal status. And in this notice, I'm not going to bore you with all the legal jargon and all the details of it. It's a whole page. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. Let me see if there's a specific part I might like to read to you here. It just goes over what I told you. And we, in fact, allege that her filing this was a malicious act. In number 5, we explained to the Supreme Court of Georgia, instead of filing her motion to withdraw as counsel of record with the Superior Court of Catoosa County, Attorney Jennifer E. Hildebrand, without conferring with her client, then prepared an appeal and filed said appeal to be docketed on June 15, 2017. A month and a half later, after she had been notified she was fired. And on the following day, June 16, 2017, filed with the Supreme Court of Georgia her motion for permission to withdraw as counsel. A malicious act. A formal complaint with the State Bar of Georgia is forthcoming. We let the Supreme Court of Georgia know. Now, the Supreme Court, they're real peculiar about their reputation. They like to keep their reputation squeaky clean, and they do their best to maintain that reputation. demonstrate that reputation. And they're not going to step off in a hornet's nest like this, and they didn't step off in it. And what they did, they sent the case back down to the trial court. Sent the case back down to the trial court and said, trial court, you figure this out and you straighten it out. Don't be sending this such a mess up here to us again. No, we don't want to deal with no Jennifer E. Hildebrands up here. So they sent it down to the trial court, and the trial court scheduled a hearing, and Mr. Hicks was transferred from Dodge State Prison, where he's been for many a year, and Mrs. Hildebrand, she drove over there from Lafayette, Georgia, where she enjoys practicing her law. And they held a hearing on this matter. And as Mr. Hicks explains to me, Jennifer Hildebrand stood in that courtroom and she said to the judge, she testified under oath, well, Your Honor, I found the transcripts. I found the missing parts of the transcripts, and I went ahead and filed the appeal. Well, I'm going to tell you that Mr. Hicks, Christopher Pierre Hicks, I've gotten to know him pretty well. Mr. Hicks is very articulate. He's an intelligent man, and he is very capable, and he did so on that day. He stated his case very good. He explained to the judge that this was a malicious act. For 17 years, she's been giving him this excuse, that excuse, and this woman is acting like some little old high school girl. And now she's in a snit, and this was a malicious act. And the judge sent Jennifer E. Hildebrand on down the road. Jennifer E. Hildebrand, go on down the road, find somebody else to represent. Your time is up on this case, and the judge assigned a new attorney. That new attorney was, his name is Victor Philip Aloisio, I believe is how it's pronounced. It's a difficult name to pronounce. I'm not familiar with that name. But anyway, that's his name. And Mr. Aloisio, he took over the case, and he immediately wanted to refile the appeal. Now, I left something out. When Mr. Hicks filed his notice to fire Jennifer Hildebrand, when he filed that notice and he filed that motion, he also filed a plea of nullity of record. Now, what a plea of nullity of record is, it's a claim by the defendant, which is Pierre Hicks, that no record exists. And when you file a plea of nullity of record, the burden then shifts to the state. You're claiming there no such record exists. So the burden shifts to the state, and the state's got to show that the record does in fact exist. And if the record don't exist, well, that's got to be dealt with. And he had filed a plea of nullity of record saying that there was no record of the conviction, or critical parts of the conviction are missing, preventing him from being able to file an appeal. And both myself and Mr. Hicks, we couldn't understand, well, now why in the hell are you going to file an appeal where you're going to raise general grounds of ineffective assistance of trial counsel and things of that nature? Why are you going to file an appeal when your objective is to get a new trial, and you've got right here under your nose the fact that critical parts of the record are missing, and that automatically gives you a new trial? So that's the least avenue of resistance. So why not just demonstrate to the court that there are critical parts of the record missing and get your new trial? But no. Victor Philip Aloisio, he don't want to do that. He wants to file an appeal. And although common sense will tell you Christopher Hicks is the man being convicted, Christopher Hicks is the man sitting there with a life sentence, Christopher Hicks should be the man in charge. he should be able to, and the law does dictate that he has the right to do this. He says, no, Mr. Philip Aloisio, you file a plea of no till record. But this attorney won't do that. He just will not do what this man says. And he's going to file an appeal. All right, he gets too busy working on the appeal, and some months go by, and he's working on the appeal, and he contacts Mr. Hicks and says, well, Mr. Hicks, guess what? I can't finish the appeal. Parts of the record are missing. Critical parts of the record are missing. Well, no kidding, Mr. Aloisio. What have we been telling you for all these months? I'm telling you what, these people will make your damn hair turn gray. So, Mr. Hicks, he's relieved. He's found out that parts of the record are missing, just like he's been telling him, and maybe now he'll file a plea of no till record, demonstrate to the court that the record's missing, and let's get a new trial going here. I got to get some relief. Well, months go by, more months go by. About a year's going by now. Nothing. Won't answer phone calls. You know, I'm beginning to believe he might be Jennifer E. Hildebrandt's first cousin or something. Won't answer no phone calls. He's a public defender out of the Walker County Public Defender's Office. I've been calling that office for over a month. Been calling it every day. They've got a unique answering system up there. You call that answering system and it rings and rings and rings and rings and rings for a long time and nobody answers it. And then finally you get a recording that says, we're having problems with our answering system. Call back later. My God, that ought to cut down on some calls, don't you think? Okay. So that's where we're at with Mr. Victor Philip Aloisio and the new public defender. Folks, this is a summary of this case. I'm going to tell you another important part about this case. Mr. Hicks had a co-defendant. Her name was Suzette Calloway, which just happens to be Mr. Hicks' wife. They both got convicted of the same 3 charges. They both got a life sentence in prison. They both were being represented on appeal by Jennifer E. Hildebrand. Now, of course, they're not both in the same prison because one's male, the other's female. And so, after Mr. Hicks finally got Jennifer E. Hildebrand fired, she was still representing Suzette Calloway. And she went ahead with that appeal. She only raised 3 grounds on the appeal, and on one ground, which was double jeopardy, a double jeopardy ground, they found that she was suffering from double jeopardy, and they reversed the murder conviction. They reversed the manufacturing of methamphetamine conviction, but they hung on to the possession of methamphetamine with intent to distribute conviction. And she's already been resentenced. I've got a copy of the sentence right here. She's been in prison for 17 years. And they sentenced her on that one sentence. Resentenced her instead of a life sentence. Can't get a life sentence on that charge, but they sentenced her to, guess what? 17 years. Yep, she got 17 years on that new sentence. On that new last little old charge. Last little old charge where there's not even any drugs that can be analyzed. There was such a minuscule particle. It was only a particle of methamphetamine in the ruins of a house that had burned down that they found, and they said they were able to send that to the lab and determine it was methamphetamine. I don't know how she intended to distribute that particle to other people. You know, this is amazing what these people in the Justice Department can concoct in their mind and actually send people to prison for. But nevertheless, that's the case in that. All right, now back to Mr. Hicks. He's convicted of the same 3 convictions. And as they were convicted together, Looks like he stands to get the same treatment. Common sense would tell you that would be the case. And as I understand it, after talking with Mr. Hicks, he's gotten wind that the prosecutor in that case would not object to reversing the murder conviction in that case and reversing the manufacturing of methamphetamine in that case as well. So we're expecting Mr. Hicks to go to court in the very near future to address those matters. However, we want to address them in a different fashion. We don't think he deserves no conviction on any of the 3 counts. We don't think he deserves a conviction to be served 17 years over a particle of methamphetamine that they found in a burned down house. Folks, that summarizes this case. Follow it on Georgia Court News. We're going to follow it. We've got it nailed down. And when we do the next podcast, we're going to be revealing a lot more. We're investigating Jennifer Hildebrand. We're investigating Victor Philip Aloisio. We're investigating this fella right here. What's his name? His name is Robert Stultz. Robert Stultz, he was the trial attorney. I'm going to tell you something about Robert Stultz. He came to Mr. Hicks' motion for a new trial. Now, in a motion for a new trial, you got to go over the record. The same record we've been talking about where critical parts are missing. Any question that Attorney Robert Stultz was asked about that previous trial, he had a patent answer for every question. He answered the same way on every question. Well, Your Honor, I was up on a ladder changing a light bulb and I bumped my head and I can't seem to remember anything. Yes, folks, that's it. And all you got to do is read the public record to confirm it. And one good thing about Georgia Court News, anything that anybody wants confirmation of, if we don't already have it up on the website for you to download or view, all you got to do is contact us through GeorgiaCourtNews.com and we will get that information to you. Because here at Georgia Court News, we give the facts, we give the fair facts, we tell the truth, and we're going to tell this right here too. If you are an attorney, a judge, or a prosecutor, and you are operating on the outside of the law, we are looking in your window. Georgia Court News. Stay tuned.
You neither lost nor won. Their dreams have crashed and burned. You still keep on keeping on. Out on the highway with the road and working. Up on a mountain with a cold wind blowing. Out on the highway, well the road man working, but the last laugh, baby, is yours. And don't you love the sound of the last laugh going down? And don't you love lap going down. Oh, don't you love the sound on the last lap going